This is the legendary Antec 900, launched 20 years ago, and this is my personal build, my second one that I did 18 years ago in the 900. For its time, this case was revolutionary. It sold for over 14 years and solidified Antec's position as the leading case manufacturer of the 2000s and early 2010s. The 900 was ahead of its time for what then would have been considered a high airflow case, featuring a fine mesh front, a large 200mm rear exhaust fan that gave it a defining and unique shape, a side mount fan, and even some blue LEDs in an era that predated RGB LEDs. If you wanted those, you needed red, green, and blue LEDs. The early 900 revisions lacked cable management and took big risks by moving the power supply to the bottom of the case, but it paved the way for today's cases. And that brings us to today, where today Antec is launching the new 900, which we're reviewing, but we're also doing a revisit of the old 900 because, to be honest, that's more fun. The new 900 is a big, expensive box with some holes in it and some fans, so it's a modern case. It moves to tempered glass instead of the acrylic that you saw on the old cases back before tempered glass was strapped to the side of a computer case. And Antec was still a major brand in computer cases when GN was founded. When we started, I started the site in 2008, and I had at that point built in two Antec cases, the Super Landboy and the 900, and the Half X was somewhere around that era as well. But Antec fell off the radar temporarily in the 2010s when the CEO's son became the leader of the company and mostly focused on things like Bluetooth speakers and battery packs. And then more recently, Antec has reshifted its focus back to computer cases, and it's actually done pretty damn well lately. A couple of years ago, the company abruptly returned to cases with surprisingly refined designs, like the Antec C8 and the Antec Flux. The Flux Pro was one of the best performing cases we've ever tested. Now, the company is taking the next step to reclaim its legacy with a new Antec 900, this time written as a number, not a word. So this is a combined review of the new case and a fun revisit, a throwback in full detail of the original 900, which again, just for me personally, is really fun because this case meant a lot to me. Like again, this is my second case, and I remember picking it out and was thrilled with how it came together, and it has remained legendary ever since. It is goated there with the 1080 Ti, the 5800X3D and AM4, things like that. The 900 is right there with them. Maybe the Half X in the cool tactical era of computer cases. So that's what we're gonna do today. It's a fun walk back through nostalgia for those of you who remember this era. For those of you who didn't get to have a 900, you'll get to learn a lot about it and why it was special today. But my Antec 900 is old and tired. It's been used a lot. The fans, I'm not sure how good of a condition they're in. So to do this revisit justice, we have a factory sealed original Antec 900 with thanks to one of our viewers, Tyler, who offered it previously, and he kept it in such good condition that it even came with the complete MSRP sticker, $150 when the original Antec 900 launched. The new 900, $300. Even though there's a lot of very good $150 cases today, so they did not revisit that part of the 900. Before that, this video is brought to you by Thermal Grizzly and their new Duronaut thermal paste. Thermal Grizzly claims its Duronaut paste is intended for long-term stability and endurance, focusing on paste longevity in addition to the usual performance focus. Thermal Grizzly's Duronaut paste comes with applicators and spreaders, and ships in numerous tube sizes, aiming to provide a high-end paste for PC builds and daily driven overclocks by enthusiasts. Learn more at the link in the description below. The new Antec 900 is really nothing at all like the old Antec 900. It doesn't share much of a visual resemblance to it. The old one had this iconic design where it's got the flared out sort of back top of the case with the hexagonal print in it for the 200mm fan, and it's got this interesting boxy front end, and the silhouette of it just looks different. It's unique, the way it's got the angled cut into the top. And the new case doesn't do that. The new case is glass, metal, and holes, and that describes about 90% of the cases on the market. It's hard to imagine the 900 in context because it was so influential that, looking back, it almost became generic. A design that was cutting edge in 2006 now looks like every cheap ripoff from 2014, but that's because every cheap ripoff was ripping off the 900 from 2006. Before the 900, the mainstream gaming case archetype from companies like Antec and Chieftech had curved front vents, minimal airflow, and maybe a hinged door to cover the 5¼ and floppy bays. If you graduated from a beige tower, you were probably replacing it with a case that looked like one of these. The matte, angular, mesh-fronted Antec 900 didn't look like anything on the market. Contemporary reviews of the time called it futuristic and a radical departure. Hexus called it, quote, the bastard son of a set square, end quote. This tactic cool aesthetic would become extremely common from other companies later, all clearly following in Antec's footsteps, but particularly Cooler Master and Rosewell took this on. It wasn't just the looks that made the 900 different and desirable, though. I bought one because I liked how it looked, but there were other reasons. There were few cases on the market that took airflow so seriously at the time. Part of the reason for that was that stacking a ton of drives with either ribbon cables or early SATA for optical floppy and hard drives didn't leave room for fans. Another part of the reason was that systems didn't draw as much power yet. And the last part was that nobody had really figured things out yet. The 900 included 4 fans, which for the time was on its own abnormal and great. In Tech Radar's words, the 900 had, quote, more fans than a geisha convention, end quote. 3 of them are 120mm, which remains a standard today. However, back then, some cases still ran smaller 80 or 93mm fans, although most had begun moving to 120s. On top of that, Antec included one gigantic 200mm fan, and that was abnormal for the time. But it wasn't just any 200mm fan. Antec had branded it the Big Boy 200. That's the actual name. Antec's pitch said the case was, quote, the most versatile gaming case ever, end quote. And Antec knew the language that sell cases beyond just having a Big Boy 200, of course. The whole thing reads like it took out a Maximum PC magazine ad. Quote, introducing the Antec 900 hardcore gaming case. Now you can own any noob ever spawned with this ultra mean case in classic black finish. End quote. Just as a reminder that for that time, painting a case black was also, on its own, still relatively uncommon. Quote, we know your gaming hardware produces a lot of heat. That's why the case is built for maximum cool with a perforated front bezel, 3 120mm fans with mounts for even more fans, and a monster top-mounted 200mm fan. That's right, we said 200mm! Exclamation point. The versatile 900 is maximally customizable to fit your needs. The modular design lets you modify the placement of the front fans and hard drive cages. There's even a tray on top for your MP3 player, digital camera, or that spare Illudium Q42 explosive space modulator that you have lying around. Be the envy of everyone at your next LAN party. Impress your friends, and just generally show everyone that you are the ultimate master of all time with the Antec 900. End quote. It's really not just nostalgia either. The times were better, mostly because the companies hadn't even dreamt of hardware as a service yet. Maybe Oracle did, but the rest of the consumer hardware companies, they hadn't caught up yet to that idea. The 900 had an extremely long life cycle. By early 2007, Mad Shrimps claimed the case was already available for less than $100, and we were posting sale links for the case still in 2014. The Internet Archive has Newegg's in-stock page archived from March 2007 through October 2019, with the last reviews posted in late 2020, 14 years after it launched, and with only minor modifications. USB 3 added, FireWire removed. And just like our modern case reviews, we're going to do a full build in the old 900 with our modern case test bench in it, which barely fits. Mostly the CPU cooler was the limiting factor, although the GPUs are a close call as well. But it does fit in there. So we can get a full test suite on this, which is awesome, to see how it compares to the new 900. And let me tell you, if the old one does better, it's going to be really embarrassing. But we'll take a look. And then likewise, this is the case is from an era where RTX didn't even exist yet, and GTX mostly was a suffix on a card, not a prefix, like with the 8800 GTX that I happen to have in this computer right here. That was an awesome machine. I was very happy with it when I was done with it. But that's what we're going to do for the build section, and we'll do a build in both the old and the new 900 to talk about the build quality for each. Building in the 900, it's surprising how little some things have changed. The main difference from a modern case would be the unpainted interior. the easily scratched acrylic side window, the number of drive mounts, and the complete and utter lack of cable management. This also predated the power supply shroud, at least in any popular form. Cooler Master with the Half-X began popularizing and experimenting with the idea of a power supply shroud, and product designer Rob Teller with his NZXT H440, when he still worked there, cemented power supply shrouds as the modern meta. So the 900 predated that revolution, but even in 2006, Bjorn 3D noted that, quote, case wire management is a nightmare, end quote, and, quote, there's almost no contrived area to hide wires, end quote. Part of this was due to bottom mounting the power supply, which was unusual, to make room for a top fan. And part of it was because Antec didn't bother to add any cable cutouts whatsoever. CPU power connectors were starting to appear on motherboards by then. EPS 12 volts wasn't as prevalent as it is today. But position wasn't standardized, and usually they were inconveniently placed for bottom-mounted power supplies, as TechGauge pointed out in its review. Antec also hadn't figured out ventilation for the bottom of the case yet, or case feet for that. So power supplies had to go fan side up internally. The 4 stock fans all take 4-pin Molex power, with speed control only possible through switches connected to each fan, or a vintage fan controller. According to the manual, these switches can set 1200, 1600, and 2000 RPM for the 120mm fans, and 400, 600, or 800 RPM for the big boy 200. There are additional 120mm fan mounts on the side panel and on the back of one of the hard drive cages, but both of these are unusable with our test hardware due to clearance issues. Modern tower coolers don't allow the side fan to fit, and modern video cards don't leave clearance for the drive cage fan. But according to Mad Shrimps from the time, this was an issue even back then with an 8800 GTX. Now, interestingly, and we didn't know this before researching for this piece, I was not aware that Antec recalled the 900 at one point to make some changes, and also there's multiple revisions of the case where they made some other small tweaks. So for example, when I brought this one in, we noticed that there's actually some cable management cutouts in this revision of the 900, whereas this original model, or as close to original as you can get, that was new in box, it doesn't have the cutouts. So there are some changes. We're going to mostly talk about the original though. Our 2007 revision also includes rear cutouts for external water cooling, which weren't in the original review units. Reviewers of the era liked the top storage area. In the manual, Antec says it, quote, does not recommend that users put any liquid-containing items, drinks, ice cream, candles, perfume dispensers, etc. in this area. It was designed to hold your personal media player, digital camera, keys, coins, etc. End quote. The reusable PCIe slot covers are a nice touch. When disposable steel covers were prevalent, you just threw them in the trash when you put a video card in. The fact that they're ventilated will help flow into the GPU in negative pressure setups as well. Our test system isn't quite what the original designers had in mind. First of all, there aren't any 2.5-inch mounts for our SSD. There's no way to mount 140mm fans for our standardized testing. There's barely any clearance for our CPU tower cooler, but it does fit, and a bunch of 3.5 and 5.25-inch bays are present in the case, but we have no use for them with this test bench. But these are still useful for some modern builds even. In order to get the GPU in, we had to remove one of the hard drive cages. Of course, thermals are going to perform wildly different with the hardware that's in here versus what they would have expected, so we don't expect to replicate any of the positional results from cases of the time, although I don't know that anyone's benchmarked this versus other cases that are from the last couple of years. But we're going to test it out anyway just for fun. When we asked about the old 900, Antec told us politely that they would, quote, like to focus more on the new 900, as its application is quite different from the original version, end quote. And that's a pity, because we don't think the new 900 will go down in history like its predecessor. As for the new one, nearly every page of Antec's product information alludes to AI. Quote, the Antec 900 is a full tower chassis designed for modern compute workloads. Edge AI, workstation, engineering, content creation, and last listed high-end gaming. Quote, the 9 total drive bays are a deliberate nod to the original 900, now reinterpreted for datasets, scratch storage, and project libraries, end quote. Quote, the chassis is positioned not just as a gaming icon, but as a serious tool for edge AI and workstation use that still satisfies enthusiast expectations, end quote. Quote, edge AI and workstation-centric support for SSI EEP, Threadripper, and multi-GPU accelerator layouts for real workloads, not only consumer gaming, end quote. Antec then shows its follow-up to the gaming icon 900 as being packed with 4 GPUs, but seems to forget that, 1, multi-GPU was a thing also when the original 900 came out in the S-Line Crossfire days, and 2, the marketing copy we just went through, all of it is about workstation use, engineering, AI, edge AI applications. There are very few gaming references, which feels like a huge missed opportunity to go for the nostalgia and just to pay tribute to the old 900, which marketed Maximum Cool, Monster Top Fans, the Big Boy 200, and Illudium Q42 explosive space modulators. If only by marketing, this case isn't anything like the old 900. It's sad to see that Antec has completely lost sight of what the 900 was built for. It was built for consumers and gaming. If they want to make an AI box and drag it through the AI mod, they are welcome to do that. We just don't understand why they'd attach that to the 900 name. If you're going to reprise the name, do it right. Do a true revisit that's true to spirit and form of it. Otherwise, you're just trying to get sales off of a name that has a lot of positive recognition. And what they're actually going to do is hurt the reception of this case, which might be fine, but by association, people are expecting something that it isn't. Quote, interior volume and clearance optimized for large, thick GPUs and pro accelerator cards, Antec says. Cooling architecture for long duration, high load operation, common to AI and ML, end quote. Yet more marketing on the next page talks about its 9-base storage system for local data sets. And then there's the, quote, AI optimized, end quote, GPU compatibility, whatever the fuck that means. The design for, quote, professional accelerators, end quote. Antec's weird overstep of testing recommendations for reviewers who can do their own job without manufacturer dictation like this, including, quote, combined workloads that simulate AI training, end quote. The document goes on and on, speaking of edge AI, ML workstation use, accelerator builds, more references of large data sets, and overstepping of boundaries and dictating reviewers what to look for in reviews, such as the 900 being used for AI with a handwave reference to gaming. And finally, a closing remark that says, quote, the Antec 900 is our statement chassis for the next wave of performance computing, blending the legacy of the classic 900 with modern requirements for edge AI workstation compute and 8K gaming. A review documentation is normal. It's basically just like a manual pre-launch to say, hey, this is what we're trying to do with this thing. But the key that matters here is the language. And manufacturers are normally pretty careful about not overstepping the line between here's what we're trying to achieve with our product and here's what you should do to test our product. That is not okay. We've talked about that a lot, did a whole thing with NVIDIA about that, and it's just they're overstepping here. Statements like what to look for in your review are an egregious overstep of the relationship and unacceptable. This would be best reframed as what we, Antec, are trying to achieve. Then let the reviewer test and decide if the claim matches reality. That's just testing marketing versus what it does. That's a normal part of a review. And a review guide is supposed to be like a, hey, here's what we're doing, and here's some maybe pitfalls you're not aware of. A good example would be AMD's core parking with some of its CPUs, where if they hadn't told anyone about that before they shipped them, it would have a big problem for testing, because half the people wouldn't have known if core parking was on it or not, or if it even existed, without AMD actually briefing and talking about it with the press before the review. So there's places for review guides. It's just that the companies, they really need to be careful to not sound like they're dictating the review. I don't think that's Antec's intent here, to be honest. I think that there's a little bit of something's getting lost in language there between the teams that I know who work kind of on the product versus maybe who are performing some of this marketing put together. But anyway, it's an overstep. I think it's just too much the way they phrased it. So anyway, we have a case review. One of Antec's claims in its product brief calls the 900 a full tower chassis, which seems to mean that it can fit really big motherboards with a ton of GPUs. The case of size makes it easily compatible with full SSI EEP motherboards, and pre-installed standoffs make that easy. Even the largest motherboards will leave plenty of clearance at the top, front, and bottom edges for fans and radiators. The top of the case can also be fully removed, along with the I/O for even more elbow room, which is a feature we've liked on past cases. If we had to pick the features for the old 900 that would be relevant in a modern design, they would be high airflow with open mesh, the distinctive humpback silhouette, sharp angled decorations, and creative fan mounting locations with a stock 200mm fan included, probably in the top. Other than airflow, these are not the features that Antec picked. Drives are widely supported though. There are 4 3.5-inch or 2.5-inch bays under the shroud, 2 2.5-inch mounts on the top, and another 3 2.5-inch mounts behind the motherboard tray. The new 900 stock layout is identical to the Flex Pro with 3 140 intake, 1 140 rear exhaust, 2 reverse blade 120 shroud top intake, and the front fans also mounted 2 adjustable rails that can be spaced up to 200mm. top fans to a removable 140 or 120 tray, and the shroud top fans to another removable tray that fits only 120. The top mount fits radiators up to 360 millimeters, but it's a weirdly tight fit due to the oversized front I/O plate. The mount could be shifted forward exactly 1 centimeter, which could help with some hyper-specific clearance issues. Per Antec, the shroud cutout allows for a maximum fan and radiator thickness of 52 millimeters, which is conservative as we measured closer to 55. 360mm radiators can also sit fully above the level of the shroud. The new 900 reminds us of Cooler Master's Masterframe 500 more than anything else. They have the same aluminum skeleton of corners and beams, the same round-edged panels, and even a similar front I/O setup, depending on how the MF500 is configured. Unlike the 900, the MF500 does include 200mm fans. The power button is the most unique stylistic choice, but maybe not in a positive way. The strip on one side of the power button is the power LED. The strip on the other side is the disk activity LED. With the single drive in our test system, the disk LED is usually off, so it just looks like it's half burnt out. The power button itself contains 2 switches, but they both do the same thing. As for the rest, the 3.5-inch sleds are functional, but their design makes them unavoidably flimsy feeling. The plastic flexes as the handle is pulled, which warps the sled and allows it to pop out of the cage. The cages are removable, but because of the size of the case, it's unlikely that power supply clearance issues will arise. That also means there's not much reason to install the I-shift bracket to rotate the power supply. The best reason we can think of is that the shroud top fan blades aren't protected from power supply wires, and rotating it may help avoid snags. On the manufacturing side, the only manufacturing issue we noticed is that the ventilated panels are slightly concave, probably due to the stamping process. The section of mesh below the glass panel for the side could be installed and removed separately from the glass, except that there's no way to get a grip on it without removing the glass first. None of the panels come off particularly gracefully. They all have small handles and don't use any magnets, and none of them can be secured with screws, which we maintain as a feature that cases should have for large glass panels. Antec did use magnets to attach the filter inserts to the steel panels, so those are at least easily removable. Improved at least on the old case, cable management is fine. The size of the case is the biggest potential issue for cable run length. We use 65cm 24-pin cables and a standard 16cm power supply, and without using the I-shift mount, we were approaching the limit of what we could do while maintaining clean cable routing. The new case is also back connect compatible, which would shorten your cable runs if you wanted to go that route, but we need to get into the testing now. So we have a 2007 stamped, brand new, in box basically, Antec 900. For this testing for the case, we were not able to put in a side fan because it doesn't clear our CPU cooler because of dual tower cooler with the Peerless Assassin, so we didn't test that, but it is open, so that'll still be a benefit. At the front end, we had to remove one drive cage for the GPU to clear, and then otherwise tested pretty much as is, straight out of the box. For noise-normalized testing, because we did not install an era-appropriate fan controller, we're testing with the 3-speed switch that was included with the fans, going from either the highest speed to the lowest speed, and we'll talk about that as we get into the charts. For the new 900, we simply tested the stock layout and the I-shift power supply mount. We would have loved to test the old Antec 900 fans in the new Antec 900 case, but unfortunately the 200mm doesn't fit in the same location, so can't do that. And size is the 900 selling point, so its competitors by size would be something like the Fractal North XL, the Antec Flux Pro, and the Cooler Master Half 700 Berserker, maybe as a direct competitor at $300, but we haven't tested that one. Instead, we'll compare the Masterframe 500 mesh, since it's visually similar. We would also consider the Fractal Mesh by 2 XL, but it's old, and we're guessing Fractal plans to replace it soon. We'll start with thermals when the cases are configured to have the case fans at full speed. The first step is testing in our hemi-anechoic chamber to determine the noise level. At 1 meter distance, the old 900 was the loudest case and component combo we've run lately, at 48.1 dBA SPL. The new Antec 900 runs at 40.1 dBA with the same hardware and full speed, and the Flux Pro is at the same noise level with the same fan layout as the new Antec 900, also at 40.1. Baseline CPU thermals in the new 900 had it at 39 degrees Celsius above ambient all core and 43 on the P cores, with no significant difference resulting from rotating the power supply. The original 900 also landed at 43 degrees on the P cores, so the 20-year-old case is starting out strong with a tie, although at far lower noise efficiency, so to speak, given its loud 48 dBA result. The older case has intake biased towards the bottom of the case, since the top would usually be filled with optical drives, but it also has a 200mm exhaust fan directly above the CPU cooler. The new 900 has full fan coverage along the front of the case, but it's also much larger, quieter, and there's more volume to deal with. Antec's own Flux Pro averaged 42 degrees on the P cores, as did the glass-sided North XL, so the new 900 is a little warmer than both. When taking noise levels into account, the Flux Pro leads this group at just under 40 dBA, but the new 900 is keeping up with its peers. The best cases on the chart are the X50 with the Flux non-pro fans, although that's aftermarket, and the BF360 stock, with the 217 and 207 also accompanying these. GPU thermals in the same test are next. The new 900 held its average GPU temperature at 40 degrees Celsius over ambient and average memory temperature at 42, with almost zero difference from rotating the power supply. That puts the 2026 900 at the top of the results, just ahead of the BF360, although worse for CPU thermals, and behind the Fractal Torrent, Flux Pro, and LandCool 207. The original 900 averaged 41 on the GPU and 43 on VRAM, so slightly warmer, if we had space to use either the side fan bracket or the internal fan bracket behind the drive cage. This would have further helped with GPU thermals. Still, the old 900 performed well in comparison to a case that has two intake fans pointed directly into the GPU cooler. The side ventilation couldn't clear a fan due to the CPU cooler, but still allowed GPU exhaust to exit, which benefits results. The case is doing shockingly well for how different modern hardware is from the era, mostly a result of the noise levels. For the new 900, GPU thermals are a strong point for this fan layout, which is why the Flux Pro is at the top of the chart with a 38 degree average for the GPU. The glass-sided North XL is behind at 42, and the Masterframe 500 Mesh is on the other side of the chart at 47. Noise-normalized thermals are next, leveling the noise as much as possible by testing in our hemianechoic chamber to set all case fans to achieve a fixed noise level across cases. CPU and GPU fans are unchanged. All-core average for the noise-normalized Antec 900 was 43 degrees above ambient and 47 on the P cores. The older 900 has an unfair advantage against everything else here, though, because we only tuned it down to 31 dBA rather than the target 27. The reason for this is that without digging up an ancient fan controller, using the 3-speed settings on the fans restricted us to this as the lowest noise level available out of the box. Still, it's impressive to see how well it did, given its extremely high noise levels at max speed. 48 degrees is within error of the newer 900's P-core average, although again, the older case isn't truly noise normalized, but close enough for something that's 20 years old. The Flux Pro is easily at the top of the chart here, so someone should give it an award, maybe for best noise normalized thermals or something like that. The glass-sided North XL is almost exactly tied with the 900 for P-core thermals, while the Masterframe 500 is still behind but closer at 49 degrees, as its 200mm fans are best suited to slow and quiet operation. The Fractal Mesh 5.3 Pro RGB, the 216, the 217, and the BF360 Flow all also do great here. Noise-normalized GPU temperature in the new 900 averaged 42 degrees above ambient, with VRAM at 45 degrees. That effectively ties the old 900 for the GPU itself, although VRAM was warmer in the old case at 47 degrees. Again, pretty impressive when the newer case has two fans pointed straight into the GPU. The Flux Pro still leads at 41 degrees on the GPU, but the glass-sided North XL is several degrees warmer at 45 on the GPU. High performers include the Torrent, a goat of a different era like the old 900 is, with the X50 using Flux non-pro fans also up at the top. The original Antec 900 was a great case. It's not just nostalgia. It actually performed pretty fucking well for something that's 20 years old and has been shoved with modern hardware that is way higher power consumption, although the Fermi era, but that came a little bit after when the 900 launched. So it's doing pretty well. It is loud. That's the biggest problem with it, I guess, if you were to compare it to the results we have today. And then, of course, the biggest sort of usability problem is the cale management. Now, through revisions, they changed that a little bit over time, but for the most part, the biggest restriction for the 900 was definitely the cale management. People probably remember that. It did sort of predate the era where cale management was really good, but even back then, contemporary reviews at the time were complaining about the cabling space. So they fixed that part, and we had a great time working with the old 900. For me, working with the old 900 again. And I don't understand what the new 900 has to do with it. It's like totally non sequitur. It seems it doesn't look like it. It doesn't market like it. I mean, even just the marketing, where they could have at least leaned into the gamer corny marketing rather than going full AI and dragging it through the mud on that. I really don't get it. It feels like they realized the 20th anniversary was coming up for the 900, and they said, what do we got in production? It's too late to do something new. What can we rename and get out the door in time for that? I don't know. That's kind of what it feels like, but it's just, it doesn't match the design language functionally or visually. That said, the new 900 performs fine. It does okay on the charts. It's not a bad case thermally. By price, pretty bad. But in that regard, there's nothing explicitly wrong with the new 900. Just Antec could have easily called any other case the 900. It's not like Antec doesn't make angular mesh-fronted cases. And they've also made some really exceptional and interesting cases over the past few years, like the C8, the Flux, and the Performance 1. Thermals are a strong point in some tests, which is great news for this new case, but it's average by looks and functionality, and it's high by price. And tying this relatively unexciting kind of normal case to something that people remember so fondly is doing it zero favors. The fact that it's $300 makes it worse. $300 might have been more acceptable for some people if they did a true-to-form remake of the original 900 and embraced retro modernism like the Silverstone FLP02. But the thing that is just unavoidably terrible with, unfortunately, the new Antec 900, despite everything else being fine, is the price. At $300, it's too expensive. We have plenty of firsthand experience with just how expensive it is to make things right now. I get it. Like, I know. I make stuff too. But the problem is Antec's own Flux Pro is available right now for a lot cheaper, at like $180 or less, and we don't know why anyone would choose the new 900 over even Antec's own other cases, maybe other than the size. And if you want to put server-grade hardware in a desktop case, then you could do that in other desktop cases that are cheaper from other companies. It's not like it looks like the 900. There's nothing special about it. So if you're just looking for a box for server hardware, there's plenty of those. Or you can do a server chassis solution for even cheaper because they're regularly dumped. So anyway, I don't get it. I'm not seeing the connection, but it was really fun to revisit the old 900 at least. And otherwise, the new one is fine. The price just isn't. So we can't recommend it, unfortunately, especially at the current price. It's not like it's explicitly bad from a build quality or design standpoint, but I think you get it. So that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. As always, subscribe for more. Go to store.gamersnexus.net to support us directly or patreon.com/gamersnexus, and we'll see you all next time.